2 decades of experience in politics and writing about government, one glaring problem became apparent to me. Most people who enter elected office for the first time have little to no idea what they're doing. There are organizations like the Georgia Municipal Association and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. They teach what I refer to as remedial classes on government. Still, those classes can only take you so far. The newly elected officials who are most likely to hit the ground running are the people who previously worked for local government. They understand the system, but they are also most likely to embrace the bureaucracy. It is astounding how many people run for elected office who know nothing about key issues in the jurisdiction and have never attended a government meeting. It should not surprise anyone that a system run by officials with no previous experience ends up breeding corruption, wasteful spending, and neglect. But occasionally, a local government lands an elected official primed for action. Peachtree City, Georgia had such a candidate in Suzanne Brown, no relation. She attended all the city council meetings, the planning commission meetings, and the board of education meetings, and read all the meeting materials for over a year. She won her race, and she is a great advocate for her constituents. Good fortune may land on Peachtree City once again, as James Clifton has announced he is running for post 4 on the city council. I have interviewed many candidates wanting to run for elected office. Clifton is a step above, has clearly done his homework, and he can speak on a wide range of issues. I'm impressed by his depth of knowledge. He is a young family man who wants to raise his family in a high quality of life environment, and he's willing to battle to maintain it. These are traits you look for in a candidate. And these long form interviews are going to give you more in depth knowledge and awareness of where the candidates stand. So watch this and let's learn about James Clifton together. Hey, James Clifton, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Well,
Congratulations on the podcast, by the way.
thank you. And I'm excited to say this edition of Editorial Interchange is your official proclamation that you have joined the city council race for post 4 in Peachtree City.
It is correct. I'm looking forward to it, and it's there's some issues that have prompted me to run for this seat, and there's some change that needs to happen. So I'm not really pleased with the direction that the city council's going under the direction of Mayor Leonard, and this is my chance to correct that.
Awesome. Well, hey, as a tradition at Editorial Interchange, we always like to pump up our local economies. And we always ask our guests, if you would please, give a shout out. We don't do paid promotions, but if you would give a shout out to a local business that you appreciate in your community.
So I'd like to give a shout out to the Remedy Chiropractic. They're located just outside of Peachtree City on Flat Creek Trail. Chiropractors, doctors Hillary and Sam Webb. They're a married couple. They do a great job. They'll crack you like a glow stick, is what they tell people. So they've done a wonder on they've done a number on me a few times. So they're great people. Live here in Peachtree City. So good people.
So that was a glowing review. I'm going to just add the pun with the glow stick.
Exactly.
Well, hey, listen. Let's. One of the things that I have said about you personally, we spoke about a week or two ago. You said that you were interested in running, and I've had several of the people who might be interested in running. None of them have announced yet. You're the first. And I usually ask a series of questions just to test the water to see how much they know about the issues and how deep their knowledge is. And I will say, you were incredible. You have the broadest range of knowledge from a new candidate with no political experience that I have ever seen. And I was very, very impressed. Maybe that's your law school background coming through, but I was very impressed.
Well, I like to stay connected. I like to stay informed. And I keep an eye on what's going on, what goes through the news. I keep an eye on the city council through their YouTube channel, and you know, it, even if you don't hear about it in the community, there still needs to be people keeping an eye on it to make sure things aren't going in the wrong direction. They're not, that somebody is holding the government accountable. And so I've always been involved in my community wherever I live. And so it's just something that I feel is a way of, making sure that if something does go wrong, I'm keeping an eye on it and I know what to do to try and correct it. So
Hey, before we get into issues, tell us, for people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and whatnot.
yeah, I'm married to Dr. Whitney Clifton. She is a epidemiologist. She works for the Department of Juvenile Justice. We have two children, Julian and William. They're 6 and 4. Julian goes to Kedron Elementary here in Peachtree City. And one of the, when I first met Whitney and we were deciding to get married and settle down, we knew that Peachtree City is where we're going to live. There, it's just the quality of life in Peachtree City is exceptional. And as a lifelong resident of Fayette County myself, I knew that that's where I wanted to start a family. There's safety. The schools are great. There's amenities around that are great for families. There's a park around every corner, a playground around every corner, and my kids literally want to go to every single one of them. So it's a great place to live. I love Peachtree City. It's a
And there's
wonderful
not,
city.
and there's nothing like that Peachtree City golf cart ride, no matter where it
Yeah,
is that you're going.
exactly. Whitney
Peace and
absolutely
serenity at
loves it.
18, peace and serenity at 18 miles an hour.
Yeah,
It's just beautiful.
yeah, yeah. It
You
is.
know,
It really is.
I've often said too, James, that your perspective changes the moment you start having children. You might think the location where you're residing at the time is absolutely perfect. It meets everything that you've ever wanted. And then the kids come, and man, do your priorities change. And that's what brings people to Fayette County, Peachtree City, Tyrone, Brooks, so forth. It's just a one of a kind community. And for people who've never been here, you really need to come experience the Peachtree City lifestyle.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Rent a golf cart, just ride it around all day, see what Peachtree City has to offer. It's an exceptional community, and that's the way that I want to make sure it stays. So
Well, I know one of the issues that you brought up was the what we refer to as speed hump gate in Peachtree City. Um,
yeah,
for those residents that aren't aware of what's going on, or viewers maybe outside of our jurisdiction who are watching this, we have a series of golf cart paths, 90 to 100 miles of golf cart paths. You can literally go anywhere in the city on these paths using a golf cart, bike, walking. And what we experienced was we all of a sudden, one day, had a series of speed humps plastering certain sections of the cart paths. And, you want to go on with the story, I'll let you finish it. But
yeah, and so these the speed humps are very difficult for the golf carts to get around, and they just started showing up out of nowhere. And it turns out that they were showing up behind the house of one of the newly elected council members, and the expense of the speed humps and getting it on the budget and getting it approved, all that happened behind closed doors. Nobody had any input on that. And once that came to light, once the whistle was blown on that, it became a huge fiasco, right?
right,
That was under Mayor Leonard was, or yeah, it was Mayor Leonard, and it just the, things like that are happening where there's these pet projects that get stuffed into the budget with zero accountability, zero oversight, zero citizen input, and I don't think that's right. I think that the citizens should have the ability to view the budget, figure out what's going into it before these pet projects go into it. Um, Another one is the pickleball courts. That's another pet project of the mayor, and it's going to be in direct conflict with a brand new business going into the Kmart that has been sitting vacant for as an eyesore for years. And now the city is going to have a pickleball court that is going to be competing directly with a business, tax-paying business in our own city that's putting a piece of property that's unused to good use. And then we have a 56,000 square foot, I think that number's correct. It's huge pickleball facility going in South Peachtree City. So now we're going to have three total pickleball facilities. And one of them is funded completely by the taxpayers and is competing with these businesses that are, choosing Peachtree City to locate to. So,
And actually, James, too, the country clubs also have pickleball courts. So,
good
I
point.
mean,
Yeah.
you have got pickleball courts all over the place. And not only are are we going to compete with the tax-paying businesses who are paying all the fees, licensing fees, business fees, all the taxes that come along with that, have to do all the marketing and advertising and everything else, staffing that you do with a business, but they're going to sit there and watch as the city's pickleball court lets you have admission for free. And so how do you compete as a private business when the city is letting you in for free? And one of the biggest problems you mentioned to me last week, which is absolutely true, half the people who are playing pickleball don't even live in Peachtree City. They're not even Peachtree City taxpayers, and they're going to get this for free while we cheat our local businesses.
Yeah, yeah, and if you give people the option between free and pay, most of them are gonna gravitate towards the free, pickleball. So, and pickleball, it's a great sport, it's fun, good activity, but at some point there's just too much, and the city just shouldn't be competing with those private businesses. And I just think that it's kind of a waste, especially once we have those businesses that are willing to locate in Peachtree City. So.
Right. Because, for example, when you said the Kmart building, how long has that building been empty? I mean, going on 10, 15
I
years,
think
something
I
like
think
that?
it's right at I think it's right at 10 years. And that, I mean, it might be a couple less, but right around there. And that's just an eyesore in the middle of our Braylon village. We have this gigantic empty building. Um, so, it was a blessing to get that company to come in and do something with it. And then we turn around and announce that we're going to build pickleball courts that are free to compete with it. Just, it doesn't make sense. It's not good planning.
Yeah. I mean, imagine any economic development project. I mean, take it out of recreation. Just say that we've got a ball bearing plant that's coming into Peachtree City, and they're paying all the taxes and development fees, everything else like this. And we say, oh, you know what? We're bringing in a ball bearing plant, but we're exempting them from all taxes, all fees, and we're giving them this great economic development package. And, they're going to sell theirs at a much lower price because their cost is way lower than yours. That's exactly what we're doing. There's no difference. It's just pickleball instead. That's all you're doing.
It's just an overlap that's unnecessary, and the taxpayer money can be spent in a more wise manner, or you know uh, some way refunded to the taxpayer. So there, it's unwise.
And that wasn't even a tier one, this pickleball facility was not even a tier one special purpose local option sales tax project. The mayor moved it up on her own. And so there wasn't even a lot of that. But the fact that at least 50% of the people using it don't even pay taxes in Peachtree City and they get it for free. That's insane. Why would
Yeah,
you do that?
yeah.
I mean,
It's just not good governance, not good decision making. I mean, at some point you kind of have to put on your business hat and say, is this a good business decision? For the businesses that want to operate in Peachtree City, and it's not. It's clearly not.
well, the $450,000 you were talking about, the new splash pad, they
Yeah,
got slipped into the 2025 budget, never had the
yeah,
plans,
yeah,
never discussed in a council meeting. Nothing was ever approved. And all of a sudden, the money just shows up in a line item on the 2025 budget and they voted in. And I'm like, how can you do that? Not to mention the
yeah.
fact, as you know, because you've got small kids, we already have a splash pad. We've already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in renovating it. It's open right now. And I suggest to young families go use it. It's a wonderful facility and it's bigger than the one that they put in for the $450,000. So I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's these pet projects, and that's classic pork, classic government pork. that's taxpayer money being used to fund uh, specific items for specific people. From the speed humps to the splash pad to the pickleball, it's not the way that the tax money should be spent. And that first splash pad, we've been there. My family's been there. The kids love it, but it was crazy to see it get built and then immediately have to be renovated because it wasn't built out correctly from the beginning. And they just spend the money on these renovations like it's water, coming out of the spigot. We got to work on that. Those are things that we really have to work on so that that we can keep the taxes reasonable here in Peachtree City.
That beautiful timber framed pavilion on Drake Field next to the
Yeah,
library. I mean, that building was just recently built, and they already have structural damage with that building. And that building, because it's a unique timber frame building that requires a special type of building technique, and you couldn't find a builder to build it, that building probably costs more per square foot than any building the city owns. It's just
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and it's sad, that building is having the structural issues it is, and we kind of need some accountability on from our contractors that the city uses in order to, address those kind of things. And I mean, because Drake Field's great, it's a great place. We love to go out there, even when there's not events going on, but there's always some kind of an event going on each month, and we love going out there. So it's sad to see that. So and they on top of that, there's all kinds of projects, that well, and we may talk about this later. I don't know, but these projects that they're trying to fund around that area too, like the pedestrian bridge that's going to connect Drake Field
Right.
to the picnic park area. That's going to be just an insane amount of money when we just built or redid a bridge behind the
Right.
uh, the library that already connects it.
It's
So,
like it's like 60 yards away from where
yeah,
they want to
right. Well,
build the brand new
walk
one.
walk 200 more feet, and you have another pedestrian bridge. But they want to. It just it doesn't make sense. It's like it reminds me of the bridge to nowhere fiasco. So, um,
Well, when they're
but
building, when they sell a SPLOST project to us, and they have to list the project and list the budget for the project, and that list is available to the public when you vote in the referendum on that extra penny sales tax. And when your budgeting is off by thousands of percentage points on projects, you've got a real problem. It's either incompetence or negligence. You pick. I don't know which one it is, but you've got massive problems when you're off by that much.
yeah, and it seems like they missed big time on this last one. To the tune of millions of dollars in what was anticipated and what the actual final cost is going to be for these projects. And we just can't have that because the who ends up paying that is the taxpayer. And it's unfair to the taxpayer to have that kind of financial negligence on the part of our elected officials who are, that are making these decisions. And it's we got to make a change there. So, but it seems like this last floss was egregiously miscalculated. I mean, they just underestimated every aspect of each of these projects, and now the taxpayers may be holding the bag on
Yeah. What astounded me the most when I went to that retreat was when they spoke about these projects and they showed the discrepancy between budgeting numbers and actual numbers. And they said, we're going to build it anyway. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you're that far off and you promised the people it was going to be a much lower number, why would you build it anyways? Put it into another project like road paving or cart path paving or something like that, because you essentially lied to the people.
that. Yeah, and that's I mean that's a huge problem. Wasn't that retreat like up in Suwannee or
Well,
somewhere up on the
that
north
was the
end?
2024 retreat.
Okay.
And here's the thing too. You're talking about public accountability on some of these things. In 2024, they actually moved their retreat to Gwinnett County, up in Suwannee in northern Gwinnett County. So the public wouldn't know what was going on. There was no recording of that meeting, sketchy minutes of any type of documentation on what happened in that meeting, and they do that on purpose so to avoid the public. And that is just blatant wrong. Now, I will give credit, and I've done this in the past, where I will give credit to Suzanne Brown, who's on council, and Clint Holland, who's on council, because this year they forced Mayor Lerner to have it at least in Fayette County, and it was recorded. They said they absolutely wanted it recorded. So, they had it at Trilith in Fayetteville. I was the only one that showed up for one of the meetings, and there was one other person who showed up for half of the first day with me. But I mean, you've got to have these things in town and accessible to your constituents.
Yeah, it's really a question of transparency. If they're doing these things so far away, not being recorded, not being broadcast, then they don't really want the people to know what they're doing. And that's, I mean, if that's not the case, if it's less, they don't care that the people don't know. That's the other, the less nefarious thing. Either of them are bad,
Right.
because transparency, sunshine is, what sunshine on the government is what makes sure that we know what's going on, and we can um, find the truth in what is being proposed, and we can question numbers like that, and figure out if these projects and the way that the tax money is being budgeted is good or bad, whether we should support or not support it. And when they do things 2 hours away, in these private kind of events, it definitely doesn't look good when you're trying to explain why you're putting these budgets together without the public's input. So
Yeah.
um, lots of work to do there, but that, yeah, it is good to see that they brought it closer, and thanks to Clint and Suzanne for doing that. Um, that's definitely a step in the right direction.
Well, we were talking. You had recognized the Livable Centers Initiative program, often referred to as the acronym LCI, and that was done during Vanessa Fleisch's administration, where they were going to put apartment buildings and condominium complexes and townhome complexes literally all over the city. They were going to put an apartment complex where the tennis center is here in Peachtree City. They were going to put an apartment complex on Drake Field, right next to the library at Lake Peachtree.
Yeah.
And I noticed too, I went to all those meetings and I protested loudly. I know that surprises you that I would protest loudly, but I picked up my megaphone and started screaming about it. And I noticed Kim Lerner, who's the mayor now, was in those meetings. Not one word in opposition to any of that. And the thing that got me was she got in office, and as soon as she got in office, she changed the comprehensive plan. And we talked about that in 2022, where she along with, and it was a different city council at the time, different makeup at the time. I think it was Mike Kingfield, Preborg, Terry Ernst, that crew, and they changed it such that no, actually, Frank DeStadio and Gretchen Kahler were on there too. But they changed the comprehensive land plans to allow for these big multifamily housing complexes to be in any zoning classification. Now, Mayor Lerner denies, well, I've never been in favor of apartments. Well, yeah, but she has voted for these large condominium complexes and these large townhome complexes, and it's the large multifamily complexes. She's using the buzzword apartments. Well, I'm not for the apartments. Well, yes, but you brought up the situation where she had a campaign contributor that she actually voted for that campaign contributor's project, no disclosure, didn't abstain from voting, and a citizen actually called her out in the meeting prior to the vote, and she still didn't disclose it, still didn't abstain, and still voted for the multifamily condominium complex.
And those large multifamily housing complexes, whether they're, and she uses apartments, and apartments are a specific thing. That's where people rent and it's high density. But if there's large multifamily housing complexes where it's condominiums and townhomes, you're still having the same problems that you have with apartments. And there's a multitude of problems that comes with that. And the first is that it doesn't fit within Peachtree City. Peachtree City was planned differently than that. Peachtree City was not planned to have a lot of multifamily housing like that. In the LCI initiative, you know, that when that came out, I mean, it was literally pitchforks and torches. The people were upset. And
Right.
that's because they don't want that stuff in literally in their backyard. They don't want it at West Park Walk where they want to
Right.
turn all those office buildings into multifamily housing. They don't want it at the Crown Plaza Hotel, where where they want to turn that into multifamily housing. They don't want it at Drake Field or yeah. Just think about how bad traffic would be if you put a huge residential complex right there where all the traffic is already horrible at Highway 54. The 74-54 intersection already backs up past the library going west.
Two
You know,
miles, 2 miles
yeah,
in each direction.
yeah, and so it would make that way worse. That's just from a congestion standpoint. If you look at where like crime occurs in Peachtree City, the most serious crime in Peachtree City and the highest crime rates occur in the large multifamily areas, in areas where there's high density housing. We had a murder in Peachtree City in that area. We had a hostage standoff in one of the apartments. And that's if you allow too much of that to happen, people start to leave, and the people that leave are the good families that are there because safety is a priority, because good jobs are a priority. And if they don't feel safe, they're gone. They're going to find some place that is safe. And so we really have to consider that as well as one of those factors. And if you really look at how poorly thought out some of the recent development in Peachtree City has been. It's like they just want to develop every last piece of land that has a blade of grass or tree growing on it. And when we talk about the 5474 debacle and how that traffic is always so bad, it's because of a lack of foresight in the planning. They overdeveloped West Peachtree City over there, where Walmart is, where the Overlook is, with Michael's, with the Everton subdivision where they put all those hundreds of houses in, and it's costing other Peachtree City citizens and all Peachtree City citizens their way of life because there was just a lack of planning in that decision making. And so, Mayor Lerner, she's been there 12 years. She was there through LCI. She was there she was supported by Plan for PTC, which was this political action committee, which wasn't even registered as a political action committee, but was raising money to support candidates for the purpose of building large multifamily housing complexes. And they call it affordable housing. And actually, it's crazy is I went to one of their first meetings. It was online, or they advertised it online. It was at Line Creek Brewery. They're like, yeah, everybody come, show your support for Peachtree City. We're gonna show you how the future of Peachtree City looks. And I get there and they go into this spiel about you know, affordable housing and wanting, families to be able to move there. But everything they were saying was the antithesis of what Peachtree City actually is. At the end, they were comparing, they were saying, we want to be like Johns Creek or these other cities in Georgia. And, at the end, I was one of the first people to raise my hand. I was like, you talk about wanting all this affordability, but if you look at the price per square foot of Johns Creek or one of these other places you've named, it's higher than Peachtree City. So if you're talking about building apartments and high density housing in Peachtree City, you're not going to achieve the results of Johns Creek and these Milton and these other cities that you just, listed off. You're going to go in the opposite direction. And it was it's like the entire room turned on me. I was like, well, I must be over the target if that, because they're using these platitudes to try and bring these apartments to Peachtree City. I'm like, I saw through it immediately. And so,
Well, they do
that,
this. they do this NIMBY thing, not in my
Yeah.
backyard, right? And they
Right.
love, all the real estate developers love to hit you with the NIMBY, NIMBY, NIMBY. Oh, you're just selfish. No, I moved to a community that was built in such a way with lighter density that attracted the highest median incomes. We got the highest median home prices. We had the most well educated community. When I moved in here 25 years ago, we were tops in every category in the state, positive category in the state. And that's why I moved here. I didn't move here for you to reverse it 180 degrees and say, now we're going to be more like DeKalb and Fulton and Gwinnett.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. That's not why I moved here. And let me tell you this. I mean, you didn't bring this point up, but I think it's worth mentioning. Those of us that have been here for 20 years or so remember when all the more dense housing and some of the apartment complexes around Kedron were being built and some on Peachtree Parkway were being built, we started having school overcrowding. And the school board had to spend $100 million+ on building brand new schools, expanding every school we had. We had trailer after trailer after trailer behind our schools. They couldn't hear in those trailers. It was a horrible educational experience and environment to try to teach in. I felt bad for the teachers because of the noise, and you couldn't control the temperatures in the trailers from what I was getting from the teachers. It was really bad. And we ruined some children's educations. And we stuck it to some of these families who moved here because of quality schools, because of poor land planning decisions.
Yeah. That's right.
And then we paid for all those mistakes, hundreds of millions of dollars worth.
Well, and I mean, if you look at all the people who are over in Everton, in the Everton subdivision, they are absolutely furious because they have a petition that's been started. They want their kids to go to McIntosh and Booth, but they have been zoned for Sandy Creek and Flat Rock because there's just not room for all those students at the Peachtree City schools at Booth and McIntosh. And when they bought those houses, when they signed those contracts to purchase property in Peachtree City, they were expecting to go to a Peachtree City school. But now now they're having to go to Flat Rock and Sandy Creek, and they're upset about that. And I don't blame them. It's poor planning that put them in that position. It are the land of Peachtree City, the land that was capable of being developed. We need to focus more on business development on that land because we need to get the good businesses and the good jobs into Peachtree City. And that, it rises, the tide rises and brings everybody up with it, brings in good employees. And, and that's what makes cities thrive. But when you overpopulate and overcrowd small cities, it ends up detrimental to the overall um, quality of life for everybody. So,
Well,
yeah, it,
all the land west of the railroad tracks along 74 was supposed to be corporate headquarters, light industrial. And from Planterra Ridge north, they kept building residential, rezoning, annexing and rezoning to residential, and they essentially killed a lot of our future business prospects. We can bring in high paying jobs to Peachtree City because we have the human capital, the talent, the well educated talent to work those jobs. Many companies have recognized that, which is why they've settled here. And we have squandered all of those opportunities to bring more of them in and keep people from having to drive to downtown Atlanta or Alpharetta or wherever they have to drive from here to their corporate job. We could have had them working here. And
yeah,
then you get all the service delivery problems. We talked about that. Now I've got to get a police uh, car in that area. I've got a new zone. Now I've got to have fire coverage. How are we going to spread out the fire coverage? It just creates a nightmare that gets very, very expensive.
that brings me to another point. The city feels like it needs to annex all this new land on the south end of Peachtree City, but we're going to end up spending more servicing those residential properties in South Peachtree City than we bring in tax money. And so it's going to be a negative tax consequence for all the citizens of Peachtree City. They're going to end up paying more taxes because for some reason, city council Mayor Lerner wants to bring in new residential property to Peachtree City. It doesn't make sense. It's not a good decision. It doesn't it's not the right direction for Peachtree City because, like you said, it is expensive to add new fire stations, to add new personnel at the fire station, to service that part of the city when you annex additional, residential property down there. And, it's just, we gotta start making better decisions than that.
Right.
And, I, I can't sit by idly and watch poor planning, destroy what is an amazing city, and when, you touched on this slightly. One huge thing was the change to the city plan. They changed the plan to
Comprehensive
allow,
plan. Yeah.
yeah, the comprehensive plan to allow for more multifamily, to allow for denser housing. And that is a recipe for disaster for Peachtree City. It's gonna be something that reduces the quality of life for every single person in Peachtree City. We have to reverse that. Have to.
And just for the viewers' knowledge, it's not that we're saying you can't have any apartments, right? I mean, it's not that we're saying zero apartments, zero condominiums, zero townhomes. Right now, just the apartments are about 14% of the total housing. That's good. We don't want to go over that. I mean, it's nice to have the apartments. If you need to live in an apartment because you're here for, a couple of years and you don't want the expense of getting into a house, or you're getting older and you can't take care of the yard anymore, that gives you a place to go. But you go over 14, 15%, and then you start having vacancy issues, capacity, overcapacity problems. And, I'll give you a perfect example too. When you talk about the South Side, we have to build a new fire station because of those residential annexations. That's tens of millions of dollars in facilities, equipment, maintenance, new equipment in perpetuity on a rotating basis, the pension plans, the benefits for the staff, 3 shifts of firefighters. I mean, it's incredible what that costs us. Those little, annexed areas with residential will never pay for what they've had to cost us, and we're going to be paying for all that. All of us will be paying for that. And in addition to the extra police officer and the vehicle and the pension and the benefits, and public works having to hire more people because now we've got to do the roads and the stormwater maintenance and all that stuff further south. They have no idea what they're doing.
And you mentioned that about 14% of households in Peachtree City are, in the apartments or in those high density areas, and that national average, I think, is somewhere around 15%. So, if we start going over that number, we're kind of, not only are we losing the character of Peachtree City, we're going outside of the norms, you know, of what most places are. So, that's it's important to keep an eye on that. You mentioned another thing about salaries and pensions and things like that. Recently the mayor announced that everybody everybody's getting raises, everybody's getting these additional
Yeah.
benefits and all that stuff, and the it's in the news that no increase in taxes. We're going to pay for this without any increase in taxes. Well, that's a lie because and here's why. Let me kind of break this down. The city relies on property taxes to pay for these kind of things. And what happens is the property values are increased significantly in order to pay to pay for these additional services, benefits, employee salaries, and things like that. So what happens? What the government does is they increase the property value and then they multiply it by the millage rate, which they do keep the same, and they end up with more tax money out of the taxpayer's pocket because they say that this house that they live in is now worth more money. And so that's how they then they get more money into the budget by taxing at a higher valuation. When in reality, the entire taxes being collected by the city is increasing significantly based on those higher valuations. If they were doing things, if the way that I would do it is I would roll back the millage rate in order to make sure that the taxes for those citizens are not increasing. Because, I mentioned at the top of, I may have mentioned at the top of the show when I was first being introduced, and if I didn't, I'll give a little bit of background on this. Around this time of year, property tax assessments go out each year. And the property tax assessment is where the tax assessor for the county says, we believe your house is worth X number of dollars, let's say 100,000. And each year you have the opportunity to appeal that valuation if you feel like it's too high. Well, over the past about 4 or 5 years, one of the things that I have been getting a lot from my clients is that we have to get our taxes down. And my clients are almost always senior citizens on fixed income, Social Security, teacher pension, something like that. Single mothers who are just trying to pay the bills, but their property taxes are going up every year. And so I work with them to try and get those property taxes down on an individual basis. And I think last year I had hundreds of Fayette County property owners who were saying, James, there's something wrong. We have to do something about this. And they were. I explained I can only do something on an individual level for you. They said, well, you need to do something for everybody. And so that's one of the reasons that I decided to get more involved in this whole process, because it's time to do something about it.
Well, and I have challenged Mayor Lerner on several of these things that she keeps saying, with the across the board pay increases and pension increases and benefit increases that she's doing. And then she gives them a cost of living increase after she's just adjusted the entire pay scale. The same year, she gives them a cost of living increase. Nobody else in town was getting that during the pandemic. But she does all that. And then she tells WSB News it won't cost the taxpayers a dime. Now, either she thinks we're incredibly stupid or something, but to say that it won't cost the taxpayers a dime. Then she goes into saying, well, we did not raise the millage rate this year. And she brags about it in her State of the City address and in her TV show that we pay for, the taxpayers pay for. She does her own little TV show, and we pay for it with our tax dollars. And she'll say, "No millage rate increase. We did it again." Well, she doesn't tell you, just like you said. No, your property values are escalating. You do get a tax increase. And I would suggest to any of our viewers who live in Peachtree City, if the mayor ever tells you that it was no millage rate increase, say, "Did my taxes go up?" Challenge her. Did my taxes go up? Because she's doing a smoke and mirrors routine. And then when she has the audacity to say, well, we need to make the city more affordable. It's got to be more affordable for people to live here. But then you raise every fee every year. You raise the taxes every year. You make, the housing that you're building is more expensive. You can't have it both ways. You can't play the progressive, we're going to do affordable housing routine and then raise every fee and every tax thing that we've got, including sales taxes went up when we approved the SPLOS. I mean, she's making it unaffordable.
Yeah, and like you said, when they say we didn't raise your taxes, that's untruthful. It just is blatantly untruthful. If if the property valuations go up and the millage rate stays the same, everybody's taxes go up. I had some clients that their tax bill increased by almost 50%. And that's a heavy hit to a lot of these people. They can't come up with a couple thousand extra dollars every year, or, in some cases even more than that every year. And it's important that we kind of focus on these kind of issues to make sure that those, especially like I said, they're more vulnerable people in our community, our senior citizens who have lived in Peachtree City for years and years, since its founding in some cases, and they they just can't afford to see our government continue to recklessly spend our money and then just keep collecting those tax dollars and keep spending it. In fact, that actually brings me to another point that I was thinking about. Recently, the city manager, Justin Strickland, at one of the meetings said, we have to spend every single tax dollar we have. It is absolutely imperative that we spend every that may not be his exact quote, but that's what he I mean that's the point he was getting at. And it just brings to light a fundamental flaw with our government. Our government should not desire to spend every single tax dollar they can get their hands on. We have to figure out a way to get it back to our citizens if it doesn't get spent. And and I think that we can accomplish that through a progressive rollback, a gradual rollback of the um, taxes, of the property taxes on our homestead property owners, on the primary residence property owners here in Peachtree City. And I think that when you were mayor, you actually had a proposal, or it may have been implemented regarding that. And I'm trying to think back. It's been a while, but I think it was for senior citizens, right?
I established a low income senior homestead exemption. And the saddest part about that, though, James, was we did that in my final year. It was on a referendum, so it had to be approved by the voters. So we couldn't start anything until we had the referendum. We put the referendum in place. And let me tell you the reason. Let me backtrack a little bit. The reason we did this was we had senior citizens, mainly widows, living in our community. Now, these are families that had been in Peachtree City, some of them since the 70s, right? Built Peachtree City, created civic infrastructure. They were the heart of our civic clubs. They volunteered at all our high schools and elementary schools. And, they were the core group of people in the early days that made us what we are today. And some of these widows, literally, I had one widow tell me that they were doing a knitting project through the recreation program here in Peachtree City. It cost $12 and she couldn't do it because she couldn't afford to pay the $12. That is what woke me up to this. And I realized I started asking around, I started looking, and we had so many people that their pensions had been ruined through the Eastern Airlines bust, where they scavenged the airline, sold all the equipment off, sold all the pension stuff off, and they were living strictly on Social Security. And this woman couldn't afford a $12 recreational program fee. And I was just in utter shock. And when I started seeing that, that's when I came up with the plan. Let's create this exemption. Now, the only problem was 20 some odd years goes by and they never increased the exemption. We did it artificially low because we didn't have a baseline number of how many people would apply. So we didn't know what the actual hit to the budget was going to be. So, not to get it out of skew, we did a low exemption number to get that baseline. And then based on that baseline number, you could increase it. Well, 20 years goes by and nobody increases anything, no councils. Kim Lerner, I think, has been on for almost 12 years now. No, not even a mention of it. Now, luckily for the citizens of Peachtree City and our senior citizens, Suzanne Brown, who's a brand new council member, she came to me and she said, if you were me, what were some of the issues that you would work on? And I brought this up. And she has fought for it, and it's going to be on the referendum this November. So look on your
That's great.
ballot and let's approve that. And it is a good number, a good exemption that's going to help a lot of our senior citizens say, I don't have to move to Sharpsburg, or I don't have to move out of Fayette County. I can still afford to live in the community that I built.
Absolutely. That's great. I'm glad to hear that it's that referendum's back. So that's good work by Suzanne.
Yeah, she did. She did a really good job. And what's interesting too, you were talking about the multifamily housing and its impact on traffic. And of course, we all look out here. There's a construction project going on 74 and 54. It was a budget constrained. I know this because I spoke to the DOT engineer personally when I was a county commissioner. And he said this during one of our county commission transportation committee meetings. And I said, I've reviewed this plan. I don't think it resolves any of our problems. And I said, were you doing a project that was based on money you had left over from another project, or a project that was canceled, and you were planning to the budget instead of planning for a solution? He paused for a little bit, looked up at me, and said, Yes, it is a budget constrained project. In DOT parlance, that means, yes, we planned a project to the amount of money that we had to spend. Now, that project, when you talk about the backup of the roads, it backs up going west and it backs up going east.
Yeah, it's kind. I think it's a project that's intended to really relieve some traffic on 74 north and south,
That's right.
when the majority of the problem is 54 east and west.
That's
And
right.
so, yeah, and
And it
so
doesn't do a thing for that. It doesn't do a thing for east west traffic. We are
yeah,
spending
and
millions of dollars and we're not solving the problem.
yeah, and that's, I mean, that's unfortunate. And we talked about it. The biggest issue with traffic is that there has been poor planning in the past, and that's unfortunately not something we can alleviate. What we can hope for in the future is strong leadership that will work with GDOT to put together a better plan for the future at some point in time that can actually alleviate the 54 traffic going east and west. I think there's enough right of way to add a lane at some point in time, which may be beneficial. But that's obviously something that they're going to have to do studies on and figure out. And it takes a lot of money to do that kind of stuff. You have to talk to the right people, meet with the right people on a state level in order to get those kind of funds to set aside to make those kind of things happen. And so, it's unfortunate that they can't come up with a better plan. Um, you know, I really wish that everybody that blocked the box on 54 and 74 would be excommunicated from Peachtree City, never to come back. Um, but because that feels like it's the bane of my existence when I'm trying to get through and somebody's just sitting there in the middle of the intersection when the light has already changed. But uh, it's a tough issue, but we really, it's sad that we're spending all this money on it right now, and I don't think it's going to help. I really don't.
Well, the irony of it all was there was a town hall meeting that had DOT officials at the meeting, and it was to discuss that project prior to it being initiated. And some wise person in the audience asked the question, well, we're going to have these left hand divergent lanes. Can't they still block the box using the divergent lanes? And the engineer had to say, yes, but we're relying on the people to do the right thing. Well, they're not doing the right thing now.
That's yeah, you can't rely on the average driver to do to do the right thing there. It's just apparently too difficult of a thing to comprehend that you're not supposed to be in that intersection when the light's red. But uh, you know, uh, I don't know. Maybe we could work out something with Ethan Allen, rent out their parking lot, and then have the police ticket everybody and pull them over to that parking lot to ticket them. So I don't know. There's a lot we could think about there, but it's going to take some discussions with the state to really set aside the money necessary to put that to fix that problem. But like I said, it's not gonna. I don't think that the current plan is going to change anything.
You have to have, as an elected official, you have to have the will to drive a project. And that means drive at the state level, the regional level, the local level, but you have to have the will to drive a project. And if you don't, and you don't know how the system works, then this is what you're going to get. Something that is a half solution at best to what the
Yeah.
problem is. And back when I was mayor, we had a SPLOS that was approved. There was $10 million set aside for that intersection for engineering and planning, possibly some right of way if there was money left over to do a project that would resolve the issues. All those councils, and Kim Lerner was on some of those councils, serving on the city council, they spent the money on other things. They didn't use the money for that purpose. And when I have people telling me, well, it's too expensive and, they didn't do that. No, I gave you the money in the SPLOS. I set that money aside in the SPLOS and you spend it on something else. So don't tell me money wasn't available to start getting things started. It was.
Yeah, and that's something we see quite a bit is when money is used for purposes that it really isn't intended. And then especially if it's, SPOS related and, maybe we do some maintenance types things with that, then that means that the general fund budget isn't using that money. Um, and then when it comes time to do maintenance the next cycle around, where everybody's looking around for the money and they realize that was spent with SPOS dollars and then the general fund is short on maintenance. So, there's a lot of these short-sighted issues that are preventable. And, and in the, I mean, and it always goes back to the same thing. The taxpayer is the person. The citizens of Peachtree City are the people paying for these bad decisions from Mayor Leonard and the council when they make these poor planning decisions. And we have to get a hold. We have to bring that under control because I mean taxes right now. Everybody's dealing with inflation. It's coming down some. But it is still a very significant issue for the average family. Sometimes they are struggling to put food on their table, and our government just keeps spending money carefree, and the tax dollars just keep coming in, and taxes are going up because property values are going because the valuations are going up, and it's just causing these families to struggle more and more, and it's just so tone deaf to for our elected officials to do that. And so, that's important to me that we really are good stewards of the taxpayer money. As a business owner, I have to make sure my budgets are good. I have to make sure that it's good. Because the consequence is when your budget's not good, you no longer have a business. The consequence when the budget for the government's not good is the taxpayer has to pay more. And that's just, we got to break the cycle.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the maintenance in the general fund. And, we were all shocked. We talked about this a little bit when I met with you before. In 2024, after they passed the fiscal year 2024 budget, they announced, oh, and by the way, we have $10 million of outstanding maintenance on our facilities that needs to be done. And we're like, wait a minute, why wasn't this part of the FY 2024 budget discussion? Never once came up. They passed the budget, had new stuff in it, fluffy stuff in it. And then after it's been passed, by the way, we have $10 million of outstanding maintenance. So you would think, James, obviously, because you're a businessman, you would think, well, then, they'll catch some of it in the next year's budget, right? FY 2025. Well, FY 2025 comes. What do they have for maintenance? $750,000, and they have 10 million outstanding. Now, not only that, but instead of doing maintenance on facilities that need new roofs and new HVAC units and all kinds of maintenance issues, they put in a $450,000 splash pad that they sneak into the budget without any public discussion or disclosure. And we've already got a splash pad, a really good one that they just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing. Why isn't that in the maintenance budget? I mean, I understand if you tell me I don't have $10 million to fix all the problems. Why are you putting these fluffy things in there, though? That's what I can't understand. I mean, you've got $10 million and you're spending something that we already have.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have like almost $200 million in planned recreational budget. And,
It's,
we're having,
it's somewhere between 140 and 200 million. The 200 million comes from because they
yeah, it's a
always
huge number.
underestimate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge number. And we're missing on maintenance. The elevator in the library doesn't work. And we have $200 million in a recreational budget. Uh, we got to prioritize. We got it.
And the saddest thing about that recreation plan that they have, it's based on just a fraction of our 39,000 citizens commenting, right? But then when they do comment and pickleball doesn't become a top tier project, she just moves it up and makes it a top tier project anyway. I mean, this is how outrageous this process is. But yeah, if I asked you, just James and family and your neighbors down the street, give me your wildest dreams. What would you want a hockey rink? You want a stadium? We'll bring in a minor league baseball team. We'll build a $58 million stadium. What else do you want? Oh, you want a shooting range, indoor shooting range in town? We'll do that too. That's essentially what that that is. And they just
Yeah.
essentially took everything that everybody said and put it on a list and said, we're going to build these projects. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. We have 39,000 residents and they want to build as much infrastructure as Fulton and Gwinnett have with $1 billion budgets. And I'm
Yeah.
like, they have no concept of the scale of things.
Yeah. And it's classic pork, classic pork. And we have 39,000 people in Peachtree City. The population of Peachtree City hasn't grown significantly in the past 20 years. Just a few thousand people, but our budget has doubled in that same
Yes.
amount of time. And it makes you wonder if we have practically the same amount of people, less than 10% increase, or about somewhere around there, just a
Yeah.
few thousand more people. Why is our budget twice as much as it used to be, servicing almost the exact same population? And it's just poor fiscal budgeting, poor fiscal responsibility,
Yeah.
and we got to rein it in. We really do.
Yeah. I mean, the saddest part is Peachtree City used to be renowned for financial discipline, right? I mean, when I was mayor, we got the first time we ever got the AAA bond rating, and we hounded that budget. We made every department head defend their budget. We went through it 2 or 3 times. Suzanne Brown, in this last budget, asked the city manager for some relevant budgeting data, and he literally tells a city council member, "I don't have time to get you that information." And but if a majority of you want to do it, then I guess I'll do it. And of course, Kim Leonard and Laura Johnson and Frank DeStadio at the time just said, no, just vote for the budget. We don't want all that data. Just do whatever the city manager tells you to do. Well, let me tell you what the city manager tells them to do every year: add more employees, add more expenses, bloat the budget, and raise the taxes. He says that that's what they say every year. Now, mind you, I'm not going to put it all on Justin Strickland, because Kim, while she's been mayor, has had 4 city managers in 4 years. Okay. So she's going through city managers like crazy. But every one of them have done the same thing: bloat the budget, add the employees, add the expenses, raise the taxes. That's been the theme throughout her tenure as mayor.
Yeah, and when you see that kind of turnover, something's wrong. I mean, it's just apparent on its face that something's wrong when you see that kind of turnover with city manager. But speaking of other, high-level personnel, our new planning director in Peachtree City is, I have concerns about that. Her resume has, her resume has City of Douglasville as one of the cities that she was working with, and the city of South Fulton. If anybody knows anything about the city of South Fulton, is one of the most corrupt places in our state. I actually worked as an assistant special prosecutor investigating the corruption in city of South Fulton. I believe she was there. It wasn't her that I was investigating, but I believe that she was there during that time period. But I can tell you this: Peachtree City should look nothing like the city of South Fulton or Douglasville. That is not the vision that we have for Peachtree City. And so that's a big concern for me, that on top of changing the comprehensive plan to allow for all this multifamily housing complexes, and bringing in a planning director with that kind of credentials, is we're heading in the wrong direction.
What I found interesting too was they actually, when they announced the new city planner, and I'm not faulting the city planner, you know, she applied for a job, they gave her a job. I mean, that is not her fault, right? I mean, it is what it is. But there were people in the city manager, human resources director, all these people who are accountable for that hire. I'm not blaming the planning director, right? She simply applied for a job and they gave it to her.
Yep,
But
that's her. Yeah.
but they listed her credentials. The city did, when they hired her, bragging that she's an urban planner, an urban city planner. That was the brag on her hire. Now, if Kim is really not looking at building all this high density stuff, if Mayor Learned, I should say, I should be more formal, is not on this high density kick, Why did she change the comprehensive plan? Why did she hire somebody with a urban city planning background? Why did she say she would not restore the moratorium on multifamily housing? I mean, she's giving all. Why is she supported by the political action committee that supports multifamily housing? I mean, we're not stupid.
Yeah,
We're not stupid. And when she's in her second term, she's got nothing to lose, right? She's got nothing to lose. If you don't put all those things back in place that she took out or destroyed or altered, she shouldn't be in there.
and that's at some she can say I'm against apartments or I'm against high density housing, but at some point you have to take a step back and look at the actual evidence and see that these things that are actually happening don't add up to what she's saying. And it's a very serious concern that you have that in a second term with no fetters on, her ability to allow this high density apartments and high density housing and things like that into our city, that the entire landscape of our city will change in the next few years. And that's a very scary prospect for a lot of us who who are, who have come here for the quality of life that we have here in Peachtree City. And, we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
Well, and you brought up earlier, but that is especially dangerous when you have an administration that has transparency issues, that does whatever it can to prevent citizens from speaking in meetings, that censors its own council members and keeps them from putting agenda items on. What are some of those issues that you were talking about?
Well, th- there's quite a few of them. One of the problems that we kind of see with public elected officials is that once they get into office, they forget who they're accountable to, and ultimately, the citizens of Peachtree City are their boss. And when you take measures, when Mayor Leonard and the council take measures to prevent the ability of the citizens to speak freely in council meetings, to be able to prevent citizens and council members from adding to the agenda. That is a very bad sign that the elected officials are not listening to the people who elected them anymore. So, like for instance, I mean, if they've put like time limits on how long people can talk at council meetings. And I understand that there is some level of abuse that could happen when there's no limits on people talking. They could bring up things that are inappropriate. They could filibuster, things like that. I understand that. But the solution is not to, in some circumstances, give them less than 1 minute to redress, to have their grievances aired in the public forum.
And, and,
Um,
and James, let's clarify that too, because the city ordinance specifically says out of a population of 39,000 residents, only 10 of them are allowed to speak. And of those 10 of the 39,000 that are allowed to say something, they get 3 minutes apiece. Now
yeah,
they want you to say your name and your address and all this stuff. So by the time you get done, you've got about 90 seconds to say what it is that you're going to say, and you better talk fast.
yeah, it's unfortunate. People deserve the right to address their council. They deserve to do that in public setting. And if it excoriates the council, if the council has done something bad and the people want to come up there and tell them how bad they're doing it, that's part of that's the whole purpose. That's the
Right.
whole point. And if I'm elected and I'm up there and people are coming at me and they're angry, I'm gonna let them talk. And if they're angry, I'm going to listen. I'm going to figure out why they're angry and I'm going to fix it. But restricting their ability to address you in that manner, to tell you why they're upset, it's authoritarian. It's not the way that our government should operate. I Like I said, I understand that there are some possibilities of abuse, but there's less restrictive means to put in place that can prevent that other than just saying only 10 people can talk and this is how much time you have. And if you can't get it all out in that amount of time, too bad. We don't care. So,
And
um,
James, I'll issue the challenge to the learner administration. Show me in the last 15 years, where somebody has abused speaking up there at the podium and gone too long or, said something offensive or whatever. Show me where that has happened and I'll take some credence in what they're trying to do. All they're doing is shutting the people off. That's their
yeah,
only thing. I don't want to hear any criticism at all. And even if, let's just say, even if they're wrong, you still owe them as a tax-paying citizen, as a constituent, to listen to what they have to say.
right. And it wasn't too long ago that I believe that the council proposed a fund to sue citizens who spoke poorly of the elected leaders. Well, I mean, that's wild. That is some really crazy First Amendment squashing
Right.
uh, type stuff there. That
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 was during
was
that was during the Fleisch administration,
yeah that was
right before the Lerner administration, and they literally were going to take a vote to use your tax dollars to sue you if you said something that they didn't like about them.
insane.
Unbelievable.
Insane. I
I
mean,
mean,
literally insane.
it's the Soviet Union, is what it is.
Yeah,
You know.
it is. You touched on there. It's anti-American. I mean, that is the absolute opposite of what I mean. The First Amendment, the first one they could think of, the most important one. You get to speak freely in public. And they're like, nope, we're going to sue. That's yeah. Things
Oh,
like that just they're not good for a government.
I thought it was fascinating too during the Lerner administration when they were complaining about allowing citizens to put an item on an agenda. So let's just say James Clifton has a problem in his subdivision. There's a massive pothole or there's a huge stormwater issue that's flooding your basement every time it rains and it's the city's fault and you can't get satisfaction. So you ask to have it on the agenda so that you can address your elected officials that you voted for in person and request that they do something. Now, they don't have to do it, but you would be able to address that. And they said, no, not doing that anymore, not doing that anymore. And they took it out. And here's the problem with that. Show me again where anybody abused that. My understanding is in the last 5 to 8 years, there's only been like 2 citizens that have ever asked to have an agenda item on an agenda. So show me where the abuse is that you have to take that out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's further restricting the citizens' ability to address their own elected leaders, and we should be going in the opposite direction of that. We should give them more access to those that are elected, and that would definitely be a commitment that I have. Um, yeah, and I think that the proposal even was to restrict council members' ability to
That's
add
right.
agenda items too, without a vote at some un previously unannounced meeting of the council members. You have to vote to get your item on the agenda just to be heard by just have a council member have
Yeah.
something on the agenda. So it just doesn't make sense. It's not a good way to manage things.
Well, the fact that, all of our council members and the mayor are elected at large, right? Everybody who casts a ballot votes for that member of council. So you can say there's not a district, they're representing 100% of the voters who cast the vote. That's who they're representing. All right, now you look at it, and now they say, well, you know what? We're not going to put your agenda items on there. And they have picked on 2 council members specifically, blocking all of their agenda items or most of their agenda items. Now, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of them, and keeping them from ever having a voice for those citizens who cast a ballot in favor of them. And they have hamstrung them to the point where they can't present. And these are presenting proposals that probably 80% minimum of the constituents would agree, yes, we need to do this, and they will not let them put it on an agenda. Just, it's amazing, astonishing. I just can't believe they
Yeah.
get away with it.
Yeah, it is. It's not, it's not the way that it should be run. It's definitely not. So, the ability for each of us to be able to, have our voice heard is incredibly important. I can't stress that enough. I mean, that literally is the foundation of America. And so, I don't want to see that squashed in our little town of Peachtree City. So,
Well, the esteemed editor and publisher Cal Beverly, while he was still had the control of the newspaper, wrote an article which just, it's, I can close my eyes and see the headline every time I close my eyes and think about it. They literally had a residential property that they were going to develop, and the neighbors were up in arms about it. They didn't like the way it was being done. They had a lot of questions for the city, and they were really protesting hard. So they showed up, and it's an automatic public hearing by state law. Okay, state law mandates on those issues you have to have a public hearing. The city gives them 52 seconds apiece to, to voice their grievance. 52 seconds apiece. Well, by the time you say your name and your address and all this stuff that they ask you to say, you've got like 40 seconds left. I mean, it's just un-American.
yeah, it definitely is. And, it, like I said, my commitment is to, open the meetings to anyone who wants to talk and to hear what they have to say. And if they're saying something and they're angry, then I'm going to look inwardly as to why, if I'm on the council, as to why that's happening and figure out why and then fix it. So, and instead of ignoring them, instead of burying the head in the sand and to tax and spend for my pet projects, I'm going to listen to the people. That is my commitment.
Well, we talked a little bit before about the algorithm company that the city is paying. I think it's approaching $100,000 a year now. It could be 80, but I want to say it's getting closer to $100,000 a year. It's a company called Zen City. Apparently, they're foreign owned. So you've got a foreign owned company hired by the city that uses a proprietary algorithm that nobody really knows how it works, and they are supposed to be gleaning the internet, all the social media and everything else, and telling the city what you think. Now, the irony of all of that is they have prevented you from going to the council meeting and telling them what you think, but they're hiring at $100,000 an algorithm to do it themselves. And I am just like beside myself. Plus, how do you know the algorithm's giving you appropriate information? How do you know there's not bots in place that skews all the data? How do you know that foreign company with their algorithm is not keeping your IP data and tracking you in some form or fashion? I mean, it just makes no sense why you would do that. And if you want to do a survey, spend a couple $100 on SurveyMonkey and send out a survey. It'll give you the same results as a survey that you were paying $100,000 for.
Yeah, when I first heard about that, back when it was first proposed, I was like, okay, they're gonna get they're trying to get better feedback from the citizens. And then when you actually look into how it's working, that's when becomes a little scary. I actually thought it was going to be a good idea at first, and then once I looked into it, I realized that this has the potential, and this is actually what's now happening, to become an echo chamber for the Mayor Leonard and what she wants. So what I feel like it's doing is it's collecting the data in a way that they then, and Mayor Leonard now has a public relations department inside of City
Yeah.
Council or inside City Hall, um, to broadcast her message more broadly. So what has happened is they've created this algorithm to collect data. Then they're using it as an echo chamber to increase the volume for what Mayor Lerner wants.
Right.
And that again is also dangerous. If you look like on a federal level, with what Doge has been doing, when they uncovered how the money was spent through USAID and how those NGOs were given money to accelerate the thought process on certain types of uh, you know you know public sentiment, and you realize that our tax money should not be used for that kind of purpose. And so, on a similar level in Peachtree City, I don't think that that's the direction. We shouldn't be spending taxpayer money in a way where it can be used to amplify a single point of view, because again that becomes a very dangerous way to spend taxpayer money.
That's how you end up with recreation plans for hundreds of millions of dollars that you can't afford.
Yeah,
While you have $10 million of outstanding maintenance that you can't afford either. That's how you get stuff like that,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
And the controversy with what they did with variances. They had changed the ordinance right at the end of the Fleisch administration, that they could give away 50% of the buffer, the setback, on what they call an administrative variance, which is supposed to be, we measured, they're off by 6 inches. We'll give them the exemption. They're talking about giving 50% of the setback out. Now, they're having these meetings in private in City Hall. There's no agenda item. There's no announcement that that meeting is going to take place. There were no minutes available to the public on what they had decided. I mean, I love it when somebody at the City Hall told me, well, you could have done an open records request. I didn't even know there was a meeting. How am I supposed to know to do an open record request when nobody even knows what you're doing behind City Hall? But the problem was they violated Georgia open meetings law and Georgia open records law. Clint Holland, I'm going to give credit where credit's due again. Clint Holland called them out at the council meeting and asked the city attorney, uh, are we supposed to be doing this in accordance with the open meetings and open records law? He said, yes, you are. And they changed it. And then, much to Suzanne Brown and Clint Holland's credit again, they forced a change to the setback ordinance. So now an administrative variance is 2 feet or less. So I'm not giving you 75 feet and ruining the entire zoning classification because I've breached it so many times so badly that zoning doesn't exist anymore in that category. Now it's 2 feet or less. Otherwise, you've got to bring it to a council meeting where it appears on an agenda and there's a public vote on
yeah. With the 50%, that you could essentially build an entire house within that variance that
it. Yeah.
requires no public vote. So I mean that's a little too far to go there. So they did a good job in bringing that issue to light and correcting it. So hats off to them. And like you said, variances are the exception, not the rule. That's something that needs to be remembered. Variances are the exception, um, because what we don't want is to have the law, the ordinance, violated on a regular basis. Because at that point, there's no point in ordinances at all. So,
Right.
that was definitely good work on their part, and I commend them on that. So,
Well, I loved it when we first met and you told me that at that time you were interested in running. And you relayed to me that I'm a young family guy. I've got small kids and I'm planning on raising my kids in this community and I'm going to fight to keep it the good quality of life community that it is. And I thought, that's what we need. We need more, the board, I mean, the city council shades older, obviously. And it's easier for older people to do it because a lot of them, they're retired, they've got the time to put into it and stuff like this. But we need more people in your demographic working who appreciate our quality of life and want to protect it because you've got skin in the game, long-term skin in the game. So you'll be here for 20 years until your kids at least get out of high school. and hopefully after that. But, that's what we need. We need people who are in for the long term fight, who appreciate the village plan, who don't want to see us change to more urbanized development with higher density, multifamily housing complexes. That is what impressed me right off the bat when you said that.
Yeah, my kids are 6 and 4, and so Peachtree City is for them. That's it's it's where they're gonna grow up, and I want them to grow up somewhere that's exceptional, somewhere that where they're safe, where I feel comfortable letting them play in the front yard, where I know that they're gonna go to school and get a good education, where they're gonna have plenty of things to do after school and during the summer because we have great amenities around Peachtree City. But yeah, I'm committed to this city. I mean, I'm planning on watching both of my children walk across the graduation stage at McIntosh. That's part, and that's over. Let's see, that's at least 14 years down the road for my youngest. So I'm committed to this city. Peachtree City is amazing. It like I said earlier, when Whitney and I were getting married and settling down, and we knew that Peachtree City was a place that we wanted to live because it offered everything that we wanted, and that's you know that's why we get consistently ranked as one of the greatest places in the country to live. Not just the state of Georgia, but in the country. It's just it's the quality of life that's hard to find. Where we are a a diamond in the rough of South Metro Atlanta. We are so much different than everywhere else around us, and that's a blessing. And I want to make sure we keep it that way. We don't want to develop out Peachtree City the way that Noonan is being developed. We don't want to develop Peachtree City the way that Fayetteville is being developed. We don't want to develop Peachtree City like the way Henry County and McDonough are being developed. That's not Peachtree City. Peachtree City has been great for a long time, and we don't need to change the character of Peachtree City to do that.
Well, you could say in the olden days, back 20, 25 years ago when we moved into Peachtree City, that nobody moved to Peachtree City to be close to anything. We moved there for the quality of life. I worked in Buckhead. My wife at Emory. I mean, we would drive through that downtown connector traffic, and man, it was murder every day. In the morning going to work, in the evening coming back. It would take sometimes 2 hours to get there, 2 hours to get back. Um, but we loved it. We
It,
loved Peachtree City. It was a sacrifice for our children that we were willing to make because we could not find a better place, and we could afford to live anywhere in the state of Georgia. We could not find a better place to live than Peachtree City, Georgia. The quality of life was just extremely good, and it was worth every sacrifice that we made to make it happen.
Absolutely, we're definitely worth it. The commute's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. Like I mentioned earlier, my wife works at the Department of Juvenile Justice, so she commutes up to Decatur, and she does great work up there. She works with the troubled youth of Georgia to reduce recidivism rates in the juvenile justice system. So it's yeah, it's the commute's worth it. You can't ask for a better place to live.
Well, I think at this point we pretty much covered every hot button issue. Do you have any others that we haven't discussed? And give us an overview. You're going to run. We know that for sure. We know a little bit about you now personally. We know about your family. We kind of know what your intentions are. What else do we need to know about you?
Yeah, we've covered a lot of these issues, and there's always going to be new things that come up, but it always results back to the same thing. Um, we got to keep the way of life, the quality of life here in Peachtree City, where it's at, and one of the things we didn't touch on, and this comes up from time to time, when I talk to other people, is the TDK extension.
Yes.
So that's a boondoggle. That is absolutely one of the worst ideas that could happen to Peachtree City. And the reason is, once you build that road to Coweta County, you control nothing about what happens on the Coweta County side. And based on what I know of the history of that program, Coweta County will mega develop their side of it, and it will absolutely destroy Peachtree City. Um, that was one thing I did want to talk about briefly, but
And, and
so I'm a bit.
And I will say on the TDK extension, I lost an election on the TDK extension issue because I absolutely opposed it because I found out what the developers were going to do. And like you said, 1 million square feet of shopping center space they were going to build right on the other side of the border, steal all our sales tax and render all our older shopping centers helpless. They were going to build enough residential population that would be more than Fayetteville and Fairburn and Tyrone combined. Now imagine the easiest way for them to get to Atlanta was a short jaunt up TDK Extension and north on 74. So if you think we have problems on 54 east west, imagine what that would have done. But let me give you credit again. I'm gonna give a guy who did the right thing. Harold Logston, who ran on the TDK extension, beat me in an election on that issue. When he found out what was going to happen and it became public knowledge, the county admitted what, and when I say the county, Coweta County admitted what was actually going to happen. He shut it all down and he openly admitted it is not in the best interest of Peachtree City. I think a lot of people, you know, didn't get that part of it, and they need to hear that message because he ran on that as a campaign issue, but he was man enough to say, and I give him full credit for it, admiration. He admitted, no, this isn't good. Shut it completely down, and said, I'm not even going to touch this thing. So let's give some credit where credit's due. I didn't like his stance when I ran against him, but he was man enough at the end to say, no, I admit it. It's not good. Let's kill it.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, and all these issues are important to me. I'm here for Peachtree City. I want to see the best for Peachtree City. I want it to continue into the future, and I just feel like there is a lack of foresight, a lack of planning, and that there are a lot of uh, red flags that have gone up for me over the last few years that have put me into position to want to get involved and run. And so, it's with that in mind that I have decided to run for this race. And, I would definitely and humbly ask for all the support of Peachtree City when my name's on that ballot.
Awesome. Um, if somebody wanted to contact you, say, I want to help you with your campaign, do you have an email address or something where they can reach you?
Yeah, in fact, I'm very open to everybody, and so I actually give my cell phone out wherever anybody wants it. It's on my business cards, and so my cell phone number is 770-598-2980. You can call or text me anytime. I'm very available. I typically take emails through my work email. It helps me to keep them organized. That's james.clifton@cliftonlawfirm.com, and I'm happy to take any questions. Anybody who wants to help with the election, I'd be happy to talk to them and put them to work. There's going to be a lot of doors to knock on in Peachtree City, and I'm looking forward to the campaign.
Well, James, I will say I'm very excited about your candidacy. Um, Rarely do I find a candidate that just can rattle off all the hot points. You've followed the meetings, on watching them on YouTube and stuff like this, and it was very evident. And I'm just so glad to have somebody in your age bracket, demographic, young family man who's willing to take on the challenge. Because let me tell you, it's a hard slog. I was in my 30s when I was mayor. I had I think it was a 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old at the time, and it ain't easy. But you're willing to do it, and you're willing to put it up, and I applaud you for it, man. You have my wholehearted support.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And you know what? One of the first person I talked to before, I prayed about it, obviously. But the first person I talked to was my wife, Whitney, and I said, if I do this, do I have your blessing? Will you bless this? And I know that we are both very busy, and we have a lot going on with our lives between the two kids and our work and everything else. And she said, James, it's for Peachtree City. It's for where we live, and it's important. So I will absolutely support you in every possible way. And Whitney is the best thing that ever happened to me. She turned my life around, made me just a completely better person in every way possible. So I actually want to give a shout out to her right now because without her, this wouldn't be possible either.
Absolutely. You definitely need to do it. And the wind behind your wings. So, right. That's the way it goes.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
James, thank you so much. We took a lot of time out here, but you know what? I love doing these deep dives, long interviews, and I don't think there's an issue where a voter in Peachtree City cannot watch this video and not know where you stand. I mean, I don't. I think you've done a magnificent job. I think you've laid it all on the table, and I hope the viewers watch it, and I hope they share it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and if there was an issue that's close to them personally and we didn't cover it, they can always call or email me or text me, and I'll be happy to provide my direct and very honest opinion about where I stand on that particular issue. I'm not here for platitudes. I'm not here to, say things like I like Peachtree City. I want it to be a great community. I'm here on the specific issues. They're close to my heart, and I know that they're important for the future of Peachtree City. So that's my stance.
Well, thanks for the discussion, James, and for all the voters out there. Remember, we've got an election coming up. Early voting starts in October 2025. Election day is the first Tuesday in November.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's November 6th this year.
okay. And so remember, we've got that coming up. Put it on your phone calendar. We need you to go vote. There is a lot at stake, and we hope that you'll take the time. 5 minutes early voting. All it takes, 5 minutes early voting. Get in there, get out, and do something great for Peachtree City. Thank you. If you really want to get to know a candidate, you've got to have these kind of long form interviews. It's so easy to watch the nebulous phrases that they use. I want a better city. I want a better county. I support law enforcement. What do they really think on issues that are impacting your jurisdiction? The only way you're going to find that out is through long form interviews, just like what we've just done. If you want us to interview a particular candidate, or if you're a candidate and you want us to delve into what you're trying to do in your community, contact us at editorialinterchange.net. Let us know. We'd be glad to interview you. Please, if you will, if you're viewing, if you'll like, if you'll subscribe, and if you'll share the content, we would really appreciate it. And look, we're the only podcast that's going to give you a 3 minute short on something that you're passionate about. Give us your pitch, your best pitch at editorialinterchange.net, and we'll review it. And if we like it, you get to do a 3 minute short on our platform. Thank you, and thanks for watching.